Welcome to Marshal Matters, your podcast for all things motorsports from the trackside. With Sean and Taylor, your friendly local marshals. Did you just eat a chocolate right before we start?
Yep.
I'm not even mad because I'll be honest, since probably last Friday, my diet has consisted of 90% chocolate.
Yeah, it was Easter.
Exactly.
What else are you supposed to eat?
The best part about Easter is binging chocolate for like a week, and then I don't touch it again until maybe like Christmas Day, and then Easter is my chocolate day.
No, see, no, I'm chocolate all year.
I've really grown not really much, so like I use Easter as my excuse just to pound back chocolate.
That's so fair. I wish I had that, to be honest.
That's
I
fair.
wish I did. I do not.
Yes. Anyway, welcome to Marshal Matters, your podcast for everything motorsports. I'm your host, Sean.
I'm Taylor.
And this week, because it was Easter, there's not a whole lot to talk about from the racing world. So we're going to have some fun this week. We're going to talk about some of our favorite racing what-ifs. Just talking about some things that have happened in motorsports and the history of it, because we're both fans of motorsports history and stuff. And just saying, if this didn't happen, what if? And we got some pretty fun things to talk about. But before we get into that, we do have some racing to talk about. And that is that NASCAR trucks and the O'Reilly series, I still hate it's called the O'Reilly series, they race this weekend at Rockingham. That is significant because really there hasn't been like a major NASCAR race at Rockingham for, what was it, almost a decade, over a decade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for them to, like, nothing's run of the track since like 2014. So for them to finally get back there, to have races there, felt very old school. I think the turnout was pretty good. A lot of people were really excited by it. So just got to mention and shout out, because I'll be honest, I didn't watch them because it was Easter. There's a lot of stuff going on the weekend, so I didn't really catch them. But I think it was nice that they got those races into Rockingham. So, yeah, I don't have much else to add. I just want to, note down it happened. It's significant. I'm happy for them. I just don't have a whole lot to talk about it.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah. So, we can now talk about our favorite stuff. Is there anything else in the news, actually, that we missed?
I don't think so. Nothing big. It's been a lot of like kind of filler, I feel.
Yeah, there is not a whole lot going
on. There was a lot of like top 6 drivers or like top 6 teams, like in terms of at least the F1 app, just kind of like trying to fill the void.
Oh yeah, and you have people talking power rankings and stuff, and like a whole bunch of other all things. Just
nothing had really happened over the last week, so which is fine. We can have a week off.
We absolutely can, but we can't. So we keep talking. So we're talking about some motorsports what ifs, and I have a few. You have a few.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go first?
Okay, you have more than I do. Why don't you start?
I'll start off with my favorite what if in motorsports, just because I feel like it truly would have changed everything. And that is, if you go back to October 30th, 1999, if Greg Moore just doesn't race that race after his accident on his scooter and breaks his wrist, if he just doesn't race and doesn't obviously end up in an accident, getting killed, what does that change for IndyCar and motorsports? Mm-hmm. And even also just motorsports in Canada. So my what if is basically, what if Greg Moore didn't die? Which I think a lot of fans are like enjoy that what if, because it was known that he was going to Penske.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
mm-hmm.
you can still see his suit and helmet. I think in like I think it's like the British Columbia Sports Hall of Fame, maybe, that they have like his what was going to be his Penske suit that he was testing in. He has his Penske helmet, which is his blue and gold helmet, but it's now in red and gold. It looks awesome. So the reason that's a significant what if, because after he died, Penske had to scramble to find someone to fill that seat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who filled Greg Moore's seat?
I do not.
Helio Castroneves.
Oh, was it Castroneves? Yeah. So yeah, in preparation for this episode, like I did spend some time on Reddit and looking on the Reddit forums just to see what people were talking about and like what the most interesting what ifs, and this what if had a lot of comments, and I think a lot of people but one person was talking about like what if Greg Moore didn't die and like Helio Castroneves didn't take the seat that he was going to be in. Would we have Greg Moore as like a 6-time champion, you know, winner of the Indy 500 multiple times?
Not just it's not just, and it's not one of those things that also like you want to like besmirch the good name of Castroneves, because he did everything. He earned those wins. You never want to take away and be like, oh, those were you only got those because you got lucky in the circumstances. Not at all. Castroneves is a great driver, fantastic, one of the legends. However, had Greg Moore been in Penske in the early 2000s, you can only just predict that he would have won championships. He probably would have at least won maybe a couple 500s. Like, I imagine what it would have done for like motorsports also in Canada, in North America. Like, if you had this guy who was such a great driver, winning all these things, winning these big races, does that actually hurt NASCAR's rise in the 2000s as well? Like,
yeah, maybe.
Like, I will say in like the late 90s is the peak of motorsports for Canada. From like 94, I would probably say, to like 2002. Peak motorsports for Canada. If Greg Moore is winning and all that, I think that keeps going. I think motorsports and like Canada falls in love with motorsports. I think we definitely fund a lot more drivers. You can see now in Canadian motorsports, there's nothing. The pipeline's dried up.
Yeah. No, and maybe like post-career, right? Like, because he'd probably be reaching, or like he'd be at that age where like, okay, maybe he drives in an Indy 500, but a lot of his time would probably be spent investing into younger drivers, and being Canadian probably would be investing in drivers in Canada and trying to like really boost that. I like with all of these, it's so hard to dwell on the what ifs because it's like you never truly know. But
so what you do know at the time, but what you know at the time was Penske. We know as Penske was a powerhouse always.
Yeah.
And Castroneves was also at Penske for like 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Like 17 years he was at Penske.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a possibility those two were teammates at Penske. Like, you don't know.
And they could have both had championships. Like, it could have been a totally like, like Greg Moore and Helio Castroneves teammates would have been incredible. That would have been such a good like competitive like inner team dynamic. But I mean, you know, had he not died, like who knows? Like I honestly think Greg Moore probably would have had like one of those like illustrious careers, at least for a Canadian driver.
Yeah. Well,
also, that we had seen.
Don't forget, for Greg Moore, he died at 23. Sorry, 24. He died at 24.
Ugh, so young.
That is so young.
So young.
Yeah.
Especially for a driver, like, you're just at the beginning. You're at the beginning of the peak of your career at that point.
So, and then not just that though. Imagine then he could have been a guy that make a jump to F1 because he was
possibly.
Again, you never know how these things will play. But anyway, that is one of my all-time favorite what ifs. Is if Greg Moore had
That's
lived.
A good one.
I think most people truly believe if he didn't die, it would have been
one of the greats.
Yeah.
Sometimes these what ifs are very sad. Like the ones of like, well, what if they didn't die?
I'll be honest. There's a couple of those in mind, and they're kind of sad, but I think they're important to talk about because
they are important to talk about because like
these are major moments that altered the course of racing history, that altered fandoms, that affect the economics of these things. Like, think how many like Canadian sponsors could have thrown so much money into motorsports with Greg Moore. Like, and even like early 2000s Canadian drivers, Greg Moore, Patrick Carpentier, Alex Tagliani, Paul Tracy, like all these guys. And if you had a Canadian winning on top of that, and then up and coming Canadians, I know it's Canadian centric, but there is just so much that could have gone right in motorsports in Canada. We had 3 races back in the day in Canada for IndyCar.
Yeah, which is now we're whittled to 1. And sometimes that 1 is like an iffy. Yeah, it seemed like an iffy one.
Toronto was on the cutting block for years. At least there's some stability with it moving to Markham. But there was never any commitment because it's like, it's just this thing. Because no one cares about motorsports in Canada now.
Yeah, and it's really disappointing, but I think that's probably why like we're so Canadian centric sometimes is because I think it's like important to be proud of the fact that like there are drivers, like even now there are still drivers who are from Canada who are making it big, but like it's so I feel like sometimes it's like really difficult because we just don't have the like infrastructure anymore to invest in racing and motorsports the same way that maybe we did in the past. But
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I mean, there's another one on the list that we about in terms of Canadian motorsports.
There's actually 3 technically. And I want to go into my second one now because based on that, my second what if Gerald Forsyth didn't just pack his stuff and go home after 2008, after the merger between IndyCar and or I guess IRL and Champ Car. Jared Forsyth is pissed and he just closed up shop. And was it Forsyth Championship Racing, as it was called, never raced again. It was, again, you can't talk about Greg Moore without talking about Forsyth because he basically carried that team through the 90s. And then it was Carpentier and Tagliani. Like, there was so much with the player sponsorship and everything like that. Like, that was big Canadian money. Even though Forsyth was American, he had partners with players and with Canadian businesses that allowed sponsorship and allowed for so many Canadians to have a path in motorsports. Yeah. And he was the guy that basically guaranteed a Canadian on the grid. He had a Canadian on his team from 96 to 2007, 10 years. And then closed up.
Yeah.
Like every Canadian that you could think of that raced in IndyCar at that time raced for Forsyth.
Wow.
So what do you think him closing up has also done for Canadian racing?
Well, it closed a pathway.
Yeah.
It closed a very clear pathway. Well, it makes it harder. Like,
but not just that though. He was in all the years of racing as well, right? Like he had over 30 wins in IndyCar in like a 10-year span. He produced a team that was a competitor that won races. I don't think they ever won championships, at least at the IndyCar level. I think they may have at the Indy Lights level, but he was a guy that basically allowed so much of this to happen. And had he not closed his door, had he stayed in motorsports and maybe spent the money that he had, because, you know, he was rich. Like, it's not like his money just went away. He just was scorned by IndyCar in the merger and then just never went back.
Yeah. Oh, wow. He was backed by the players.
Yeah, that's why all the players' cars were always the Forsyth cars. Now, also, I'm pretty sure the getting rid of tobacco sponsorship also played a role in him closing shop. Which, unfortunate, but I get why that happened. That affected motorsports everywhere.
That was such a major thing.
That could have also be a what if. That could be a great what if. What if they never canceled tobacco sponsors? Damn.
What if we never realized tobacco was actually very harmful for people?
Listen, we're gonna hold on to that thought. We're gonna do some lightning round what ifs afterwards of ones that came to your head, because there's so many that you could do.
That's actually there are so many. But yeah, I mean, like that's another really good one. Like, what if all of that, you know, support and money didn't leave? But interesting.
Yeah. I think that's a significant what if in the world of motorsports, because he could have been a team that could have been fighting for wins.
Yeah.
Because he always had he had the people, he had the money. Maybe we don't see a big 2 like the Ganassi Penske. Maybe it's a big 3, and then. But we'll
wouldn't
never
that
know.
be nice instead of the big 2 in IndyCar?
That's fair. Because, like, you can always make the argument, like, big 3 with Andretti, but, like, you know, they're never winning.
It's kind of hard right now to say big 3 with how, like, Andretti has performed in the last couple of years.
They're literally leading the championship. How dare you say that?
Are they?
Yes. Kirkwood's leading the IndyCar championship, okay?
I take it back. Maybe this year is a good year. Maybe this year is a hit. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway,
what if this year is a miss?
It may end up being. So what do you have for your first what if?
So my first what if is, what if Daniel Ricciardo never left Red Bull? And I feel like this is an interesting one, because I think that when you really think about it, it's not only, you know, what does that mean for Ricciardo? What does that mean for the circus of drivers that have gone in and out of Red Bull in the years that he left, like since he had left, right?
Yeah.
I think we can firmly say that
Zach Brown would not have a tattoo.
Yes. Zach Brown would not have a tattoo, and neither would Cyril. But I think I do, like, I'm not saying that Ricciardo would have never left Red Bull. I think it's more the question of what if he never left at that time in his career. Because I think that, like, he was kind of coming off of a high, and I think part of it, I mean, the biggest part of it was that Max is Max Verstappen, and it's very difficult to be Max's teammate, regardless of who you are. But I mean, if Ricciardo stuck around, I feel like he would have seen a lot more success. Like, the car was there, the car was only getting better.
He could,
and I think he would have, and he could drive it. And I think that in many ways, he was actually probably a good teammate for Max to have, because I think that they pushed each other.
Yeah.
And I think I still think it wasn't the best move for his career to go to Renault.
No, absolutely not. That was a terrible move. To go to Renault and then to go to McLaren. Like, you could spin this off in so many ways. Like, did him going to Renault actually screw over Renault more? Because they thought, oh, we have a driver now, not realizing they never had a car.
Yeah.
did he help McLaren's rise?
Yeah. Did he?
Who knows?
Who knows? I think possibly.
I definitely think he would have won a lot more. I think Red Bull would have been way more competitive. I
don't think we would have seen the merry-go-round of drivers that we did in the last few years. And I think, Ricciardo's still being there. Gasly maybe has a couple more years at AlphaTauri, and maybe he doesn't end up going to Alpine. Like, he has a couple more to develop and gain confidence. That would mean that maybe Albon never got called up. So who knows what that would have done to his career. But there's like so many different points in not only like Ricciardo's career where you have to think about, like, if this decision didn't happen, what would that have meant, like, for the last few years of F1 and like where drivers have gone? Does Sainz leave McLaren?
To be fair,
I don't know.
When did he leave?
Who, Ricciardo?
Yeah.
Was it like 2018, 2019?
I think it was.
Or was it 2020?
Oh, no, it wasn't 2020. It was way before that.
It was earlier. Earlier. Was it in 2018?
I want to say 17, but maybe it was 18. It was 2018. Nope. 2019 actually is when he left.
Oh, it was 2019. Okay.
So if it's 20, let's say he stays 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, doesn't go to Renault and maybe doesn't move to McLaren until like 2022. Mm-hmm. Does 2021 play out differently in the terms of the Max versus Lewis fight?
Oh, maybe it does. Because maybe. So 2021, who are the drivers in Red Bull 2021? Was it Sergio and? Oh
yes,
gosh,
it was
see,
Sergio,
like now it's 26.
It was Sergio and Bottas were the backup drivers in that one.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So let's think about this, right? Like, Sergio was a good number 2, but he struggled a lot with that car. I think he was the most consistent number 2, but he wasn't necessarily like a consistent, McLaren one, or not McLaren, Red Bull 1-2.
Yeah.
Especially if that was one of the years where we saw like another dip in his performance, and then they signed on for another couple years, and it was just even more of a dip in his performance. But say Ricciardo stays on in 2021, I think that we possibly could have seen a battle between 3 drivers versus, maybe it wasn't just 2, maybe it wasn't just Max.
I think,
or
Lewis
maybe
wins.
Max doesn't have the points. Maybe Max doesn't have the points to get
it's
there.
Like,
because
who does he take? Who does he take
off.
the points off of? Right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Lewis probably would have another world champion. He probably would have beat that record by now.
Yeah, probably. But I think that's a really good one of what would happen. What would the grid look like? Because the whole revolving door of Red Bull. You bring a great point like that. That would, who knows? Like, Gasly doesn't take that seat, then Albon doesn't take that seat, then you don't have Perez in that seat, then you don't have like all these young guys who've tried to fill that seat over the years.
You don't have Lawson, you don't have Yuki, like, you don't have all of these guys trying to get to be in a car that like they don't know, and Red Bull just doesn't give them the opportunity to figure out either.
Okay, counterpoint though. Here's a better counterpoint. If Ricciardo stays, does Max leave?
No.
Who knows? Back then it could be like, oh, you're paying this guy and you're paying us as equals. I'm going to leave so that I can go be a number 1 somewhere else.
I think
I don't think that would have happened, but like, that's another thought that comes across my mind of how much the grid changes.
Yeah, that's a good point though. It's a good counterpoint because like, it's very clear that Max is a number 1 driver, and I think he always wanted to be that. And like, let's think about like where Max was at that point in time. Like, Max was like 20 years old still. He was still so young. And at that point in Max's career, he wasn't mature, and he got himself into a lot of trouble. Like, let's remember the whole like Max Verstappen Ocon incident, which I think was like 2018, 2019.
Yeah, it wasn't that big of an
incident. It wasn't that big of a, but it still showed that he wasn't mature in his thinking and he wasn't able to control himself, and he probably would have had the ego to be upset if Ricardo was being paid like a decent amount.
Yeah.
Granted, he was still young. I do think that Max probably would have stuck around because I think Red Bull had invested in him enough to be a number one, and that was part of Ricardo's decision to leave. And I think Max is just so naturally talented that he would have found success either way. So yeah, like I think it's one of those what ifs. I don't would have ever even crossed Ricardo's mind because I think when he made his decision to leave, he was done being a number 2 driver and he really wanted to be a number 1 somewhere else. Unfortunately, I think it would have been better for his career if he had stayed.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay being the number 2 and winning.
Yeah.
Some guys made great careers out of that. Perez, Bottas. I mean, Nico Rosberg.
Yeah. Yeah, wins and dips.
Greatest move ever. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
Don't call it a fluke.
Yeah, so that was kind of my my fun one of kind of thinking about that. And I've always kind of thought about that. Like, what if Ricardo just never left?
That's fair. I think that's a very good one.
Thank you.
My next one, again, a little on the more depressing side of what ifs. I want to say, what if Adam Petty was never killed in NASCAR?
Interesting, because I have never heard of Adam Petty.
So,
Tiskus. I also don't know NASCAR history very well.
That's fair. Adam Petty was son of Kyle Petty, grandson of Richard Petty, great-grandson of Lee Petty. So, again, the Petty name was synonymous with NASCAR for its entire history.
Okay.
Adam Petty was the next up-and-coming Petty name after, obviously, Kyle, because Kyle Petty didn't have the greatest career. And I think part of that was because his son died. So basically, towards the end of the 90s, early 2000s, Kyle Petty, with also like his dad and everything, like through like Petty Enterprises, was building a team around Adam. Like, he was going to take on the Petty name into NASCAR. He was going to be the 4th generation guy. And he was starting racing in the Busch Series at the time, had a couple cup starts, was going to basically go full time, I think, the next year to the Cup Series. But he was killed in a crash at practice at New Hampshire in 2000. So this is before the Dale Earnhardt stuff. So this was in the early 2000s, where there was many of these deaths with the basilar skull fracture and stuff like that. But what it did, it ended the Petty line. And like he died at 19.
19?
19.
Oh my gosh.
So when you're had he raced a full career, he probably would have retired 2020-ish.
Wow.
Yeah, like he had a whole career ahead of him.
Oh my gosh, that's so sad.
No, 100%. And like, one, it broke basically the Petty family in terms of like their lineage. This entire team that basically had been around forever in terms of like Petty Enterprises was I would say were forced, like originally the idea was, I think Kyle was going to race with Adam, but then they had to find a new driver. Kyle Petty then raced Adam's car, which was like the 45 instead of his usual 44. So a whole bunch of stuff changed. Had he been basically, I think, able to run as a career as he would. I think that team would have been one of the more popular teams. May have not have been the most successful on track because they were never successful. But with the petty name, the sponsors that can come with that, all the stuff with, I guess, because he actually was really good also coming up. Like, he definitely could have done better than his father did in his career. So basically, it's one of those things where I think if he had never died, you would have seen a different popular driver. Because, yeah, he was young, up and coming. Like, him and Dale Earnhardt Jr. would have basically competed, I think, for most popular driver for the 2000s. And, yeah, eventually, they closed, I think, in 2008, Petty Enterprises. And eventually, like, through other stuff and yada yada, the team entity somehow came on to become Legacy. That's why the 43 is still part of that team. But I just think it's one of those ones where, again, a career is cut short that had so much potential, not just on track, but also on the marketing side of things. Where could that have taken him, the sport, so many other things. So that's one that I would say is a what if that doesn't happen. But then on the flip side, what of the safety? What if then, because his death was one of the ones that really brought on the Hans device and the talk of like, no, this is needed. And it wasn't after Dale Earnhardt's death where it was, oh no, this is really needed. Maybe more people would have died if it wasn't for Adam Petty's death as well. So
yeah, I mean, and that's it's the horrible trade-off, right? Of like, if these things didn't happen, would we be as advanced in motorsports in terms of safety that we are right now?
Yeah.
Or would it have just been somebody else, right? Like, I think that's the thing. Like, it probably would have been someone else.
I think for sure it would have been someone else. Like, that's just how these things work. Like, usually something bad has to happen. And, like, you could take, like, the low-hanging fruit of, like, oh, what if Dale Earnhardt didn't die? It's like, okay, well, that, not a whole lot. Again, it probably would have been someone else. So, that's a sad one as well. So, I'll throw it back to you for your next what if. Oh, I see. We're going down the sad path again. Let's go.
We are going on the sad path again because this is something I think about all the time. And I'm not gonna lie, when Lego released the car that they had chosen for the Ferrari for their icons, and it wasn't Gilles, I understand Michael Schumacher, yes, is an icon, makes sense. But I love Gilles Villeneuve.
Yes.
And one of my biggest what ifs is what if Gilles hadn't died. And I will say, when I looked this up, because I just wanted to see what people would say. And the first comment on the Reddit forum being, if Gilles didn't die, he would have parented Jacques to not be such an asshole. I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Damn.
I was like, okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I get it. Makes sense.
I get it. Makes sense. I did think that was really funny being the first comment on the Reddit forum. And, but yeah, I mean, like,
is he an asshole or is he just Quebecois? Like, come on.
I don't think Gilles was, though.
I'm talking about Jacques, but yes, good point.
But I don't know, if his father was still around, maybe he wouldn't have turned into one. Who knows? But you bring up a good point. Anyway, so let's go down this path, right? Like, what if Gilles doesn't die? What if he didn't die in that? I think it was qualifying.
Something like that.
Was it qualifying or practice? At Zolder.
Yes.
So, at the time, right? Like, it's not like he was at the beginning of his career, but I think he was in a really good place in his F1 career at the time. And it was rumored, like right before he died, it was rumored he was going to go to McLaren, which was the seat that ended up going to Prost. So who ended up winning? or like having a great career with McLaren as well. But also Senna, right?
Yeah.
You know, I feel like, you know, Villeneuve and Senna at the and that would have been such an interesting mix. But I think we can also go back to our conversation about what would that mean for Canadian racing. You know, having such a good, talented Canadian driver in F1. Not to say that Lance isn't a talented Canadian driver, he is. But Gilles was iconic, and he was so good. And he had a couple of bad years in F1, but I would say he was going, the trajectory was only going up for him at the time. This was only like what, the fifth race of the season, and it was going pretty well. So who's to say? But I think it's just like, you know, what if Gilles doesn't die? Does he become a 6-time world champion in F1?
Probably not.
But maybe he does.
Maybe he gets one.
If he moves to McLaren, he might get one. He already had, didn't he? Oh no, he definitely gets one. He didn't have one. He didn't live long enough for one.
No, he never won one. But also Ferrari was not.
Ferrari wasn't a top team, but he was going to go to McLaren, who was a top team at the time.
Okay, it wasn't guaranteed he'd go to McLaren, but I get it. If he had gone to McLaren, because McLaren did offer him a contract, maybe, yeah, things would have played out way differently.
But yeah, wasn't guaranteed, but you know, we're what if in this scenario. That's the whole point.
No, 100%. Like, it is fascinating, and again, what does that do for Canadian
But what does that do
motorsports?
for Senna? What does that do for Canadian
Prost? Yeah, like what does that do for the grid?
Yeah.
Who took over his seat afterwards too?
I don't remember.
Neither do I. Maybe it was a revolving door, because that's also a thing that happened.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let's see. 1982 Ferrari F1 team.
I can't find it.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know who took over.
He died in 82. He died in 82.
My point is, I don't know who took over, because I'm guessing it wasn't, I guess, more important.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, like, Gilles wasn't at that point in his career, right?
Okay, Patrick Tambay took over for him.
Patrick Tambay.
So, yeah. And Didier Pironi, a couple Frenchmen.
Oh, yes, Pironi.
He had 3 wins. Good for him. Oh, wait, that was in the early part of his career. He actually was his last season was the year he filled in. So, yeah, I don't think it had a big effect on guys coming into F1. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do. Like, I just think a lot about like what that would have meant for Canadian motorsports, for sure. And I will say, like, Gilles is like a much loved and kind of like cherished legend in Canadian motorsports.
Yeah.
Always will be. But
there's a Villeneuve movie coming out this year.
Yes, I do.
I am actually pumped to see that. I told my dad about it. My dad was a big Villeneuve fan back in the 80s, like 70s, 80s. My dad loved Villeneuve. So I told him about it. He's like, "Oh, I want to see that." I'm like, yes.
I think it's gonna be in French. Like, I think it's
it's a French movie.
It's a French movie, or I think it's made in Quebec, or like made by a Quebec company.
It's a Quebec production for Gilles Villeneuve. Yeah, I think it should be in French. He was French, damn it! Like,
yes, I agree.
Give the Quebecois some credit here.
Oh, I agree, and it's I want to see it so bad. I love Villeneuve. I think, and his relationship with Pironi was very interesting.
Yeah.
If you've never seen the documentary on Prime, you should. It's very good.
Okay. But yeah, I think that's a really good one. There's a lot of, I think, possibilities that a lot of unknowns if Villeneuve had lived. Like that changes, I think, a lot of the 80s projections of F1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just like honestly, what like my biggest thought is around like what say he does go to McLaren, like what would that have looked like with him and Senna? That would have been so interesting.
I actually don't think Senna goes to McLaren at all. No. If that
Maybe
happens, Senna never goes to McLaren because it's probably Prost and
Villeneuve.
Prost and Villeneuve just dominate the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and who knows? Maybe Senna ends up at Ferrari.
Then that's a whole different, Or he goes to Williams early.
Maybe he does, and maybe his crash never happens. I don't know. Like it could.
Yeah, there's so much.
I don't know.
Like
he would have been involved in that car development, and he probably would have been like, "I don't think this is safe." Who knows?
Yeah, if Villeneuve lives, 80s F1 is completely altered.
Completely. So
like, how many of these things we're talking about too, though, are also just like such freak accident things. Like, Villeneuve's like hit right over the back of a guy. And if that guy is just going a little bit faster, he's ahead of him. That's not an accident. When Adam Petty died, I think his throttle stuck in his car. That caused him to hit the wall.
I was reading when you were talking about it. I was reading the Wikipedia article, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, like throttle sticks, hit the wall, 100%. Greg Moore is if it doesn't turn into the wall, or if he just doesn't race because he hurt himself the day before in the parking lot. Like, there's so many. Again, the only thing that's like not like that is like Forsyth. It's like, come on, don't be a little bitch and quit. Like. I mean, that's kind of also the Daniel Ricciardo thing, too. It's like the what ifs is like if accident didn't happen or if someone wasn't a little bitch. Like that's kind of the flip side here.
Yeah, that's the spectrum of what ifs.
Yeah, like, and again, to finish it off, my final what if is to go with my hat. What if Wickens didn't get in that crash in Pocono? What if that crash didn't happen? What if, I don't know, Ryan Hunter-Reay backs the fuck off going on the outside of... Was he on the outside? Yeah, he was on the outside of that turn. You know? Maybe. Where's the inside? I don't know. If they don't go too wide in the turn 2 at Pocono, that doesn't happen. And there's such a what-if of how fantastic SPM was, Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, with Wickens and Hinchcliffe. It was such a fun team. There was so much good vibes around them. They were fighting for wins and podiums the entire season. They had bad luck on their side the entire season. Because that season started with Wickens almost winning in St. Pete. I think he qualified on pole. His very first IndyCar race on pole. Was fighting. It was a late restart, I think, with like 1 to go. And Rossi punted Wickens in the restart. So he got robbed his first win. Another one was, I think, Phoenix. They had a good shot of like a 1-2, and it was like a bad strategy call at the end where Newgarden took fresh tires. They didn't. So like stuff like that, where that team had such good vibes. The A team was fantastic. This is signed by both of them.
That's so cool.
I love this hat so much. And like, if that doesn't happen, one, that accident also fucked Hinch's career. Hinch never recovered from that accident. Yeah. Like, I think mentally he recovered from his own.
Okay, the what he recovered from the one that like impaled him?
Yeah, he recovered from that. He makes jokes about that one. He's fine, I think, after that. I think the Wickens one wrecked him. And you can just see it in his results since then. Like, he was never the same after that crash. And like, he got hurt in that one too. I think he cut his hand, but yeah, he just never, I think, reached the same threshold, because that was Hinch's best year too, up until then.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, it's easy to say. I think like, what if that doesn't happen? Like, Wickens' career in IndyCar definitely would have continued. Both of them probably would have had an amazing season.
Well, I'm thinking, okay, so look how this continued also. So Schmidt-Peterson was Schmidt-Peterson that year. The next year, it became Arrow Schmidt-Peterson. And 2 years later, it became McLaren. So if that accident doesn't happen, and you keep around and you still keep the good vibes going, and I think the good money pouring in with Wickens and Hinch, again, you're probably getting a lot of sponsors on that. Those were very popular drivers. Guys wanted to basically run them. You probably don't fire Hinchcliffe because he is popular with his friend on the team. You maybe look past the whole Sports Illustrated fucking shoot he does. So again, I think there's I think Hinch is probably still driving an IndyCar if that doesn't happen. Yeah. I think Wickens is still an IndyCar. Like, I think that's then a top team, and maybe your McLaren team is Pato, Hinch, and Wickens at this point. Like, maybe Hinch eventually gets booted and goes to the, what's it called? The booth. But I think Hinch's career is one that's absolutely wasted because his talent level never gets a top team, gets on a team that's building, right as it becomes a top team, he gets kicked, gets basically sent down to Andretti's throwaway car, still manages a podium in that season. Like, yeah.
Excuse me, what's wrong with the Sports Illustrated shoot?
Hinchcliffe got fired from McLaren or from Arrow because he did a naked Sports Illustrated shoot with their car.
I don't think there's anything wrong with this.
I agree. I think it's fantastic.
I think it's fabulous.
I think they would look past that if Wickens was on the team also. Because I think that team wins a lot more.
Such a dumb, stupid, or what if Arrow wasn't such a dumb, stupid team to fire James Hinchcliffe for this? Because I think this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that's a massive what if that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because there is... And, like, I don't really want to go too much into that because that one is recent history. And if, somehow they ever hear that, I don't want them to actually be mad if, like, oh, how dare you just that? I'm like, agreed. It is awful. It's a tragedy. It fucking sucks. Glad Wickens is alive. If that doesn't happen, I think the top two drivers in... I mean, not top two, but... I think you're seeing two Canadians doing really well in IndyCar. I see IndyCar being popular in Canada again because it was really on the rise with them. People were talking about it. There was a lot of hype behind them. And then we cut to now less than a decade later. There's not a Canadian on the IndyCar grid and not one up and coming.
No. Yeah.
So,
and it's sad. It's sad.
It is. So it's a shitty one.
Yeah. And on that note,
that's I guess all the ones. Okay, a couple quick ones that popped in my head. Okay, what if Nicholas Latifi doesn't crash in Abu Dhabi? That's a really fun one to do.
Oh. I guess.
What if Mercedes don't take each other out in Spain in 2015?
Yep.
That totally changes their relationship. I don't think they hate each other as much.
Maybe not. Probably not.
Then there's also 2016. What if Lewis's car doesn't blow up in Malaysia? That's another one you could do. There's so many fun ones that are just like...
Yeah. And a lot of it, you know what? A lot of those kind of fun ones are luck, just bad luck. Like, what if your luck was different that day?
Yeah.
So many. And I mean, that's, not so much.
Well, good. How, but those are still bad luck. Those are still things that freak accidents happen that affect the course of motorsports.
Mm-hmm. What if the dice just rolled a little different that day?
Yeah. Again, what if Hinchcliffe doesn't get fucking shish kebabbed?
Yeah.
I mean, it resulted in a new safety for cars and one of the greatest medical rescue stories in motorsports.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like, and that's, we talked about it before. It's like, that's the trade-off of the what ifs. It's like
100%.
most of these situations, I mean, outside of the like leaving ones, or decision-making ones, was really, they informed safety going forward. And it's, how much longer would we have had to wait for some of these things to happen?
Yeah. If you want
that
to
were desperately needed.
A really crazy one that I thought of also, what if Ford did buy Ferrari?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
No, it would have ruined everything.
So much would be ruined. So like, and like you wouldn't have like the Ford GT wouldn't exist. Like that one just is incredible to think of, the butterfly effect that could do.
Thankfully, that didn't happen.
Yeah, there's not.
That's a what if I'm really glad to not explore.
Yeah. If you could pick any what if on the list to like go back and change for that to actually happen, what would you pick? I'm basically asking you, are you going to save someone's life or tell someone not to be a bitch? That's kind of how we're going. And then which life do you want to save?
And like, which life do you want to save? That's a horrible question.
It's a terrible question. No, you gotta pick one. It's a terrible
question. Can I invoke the right to pass?
No, you gotta pick one. I need it on record.
I almost, if I could go back and choose, of all the ones that we have discussed, maybe Greg Moore. Because I really would have loved to have seen what he could have done with his career and like where he would be now and like what that would mean even for like the, IndyCar in Canada. Would we have more races? I don't know. I think
that one has the most potential and the most, we kind of know what the trajectory would have been.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think that's the most for sure one.
Yeah, as fun as some of the other ones are to kind of go over and could be like, oh, what could have happened differently here? That one, I think had that not happened, there would have been success, definitely.
Mm-hmm. It would have changed things for Canadian motorsports.
Yeah,
like back then and also for years to come. And I think we would be in a very different situation than we are now, where it's hard to find people who want to volunteer at a racetrack because who cares about motorsports anymore in Canada?
Oh, also a final one of what if they didn't build a giant fucking hotel in Toronto and fuck up the pit lane? I'm still bitter about that, to be honest, and will always be.
Yeah, fair enough.
Anyway, on that wonderful note, I think that's all we got for this week, right?
That's all we got.
Is there any races this week?
Not F1.
So. No.
Probably NASCAR. Is NASCAR back?
NASCAR is back. And then we don't have IndyCar until next week.
Until next week.
Yeah, and NASCAR is at Martinsville. No, that was last week. Bristol this weekend.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm going to bet Bell.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh,
nice.
Or Bubba. One of the B's. I'm going to guess a B. A name with a B starts with a B is going to win. Yeah. Bubba, Bell, Byron, Blaney, Bowman. There's a lot to pick from, but a name with a B is going to win. Where can I bet that?
Nowhere. Too many options.
That's almost a guarantee.
Yeah, it's pretty much a guarantee.
Anyway, on that fun note, we'll be back next week. Thank you and goodbye. Thank you for listening to Marshal Matters. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave a rating and a comment, and also follow so you don't miss an episode. And don't forget, if you want to get involved in motorsports, the easiest way to do so is by marshalling at your local track. Join our cult.